pulling back from our foreign conflicts, foreign wars, found it was a lot harder than he imagined.
It was thinking that during the inaugural address by President Trump. You can make all these promises, you can hope that out of Iraq in 2011, then he had to put them back in. And we have 5,000 now back in Iraq. We have 500 in Syria. So our anti-war president had to send troops back into battle.
Said his toughest decision was after promising to pull American troops out of Afghanistan and Iraq, in one of his first decisions having to increase the troops. We'll see what happens with President Trump.
And you know why all this is going on, I can't help thinking about what the White House staff is doing right now. Changing the furniture. What do they have, 6 hours? To get 6 hours.
And they don't hire professional movers. This is the White House staff. They come in before dawn, and they're the ones who are making this all happen in this 5-hour interim period before the new first family comes home.
There's Ivanka and Jared coming in.
Some of President Obama's staff members mentioned the bus ride over as they arrive at the White House. They're shown where their offices are, and there were Post-it notes with the password to get into the computer to set your own password.
The Congress Senate gathering, Terry Moran.
Well, as we see President Obama and the First Lady prepare to depart Washington, it's not only the end of the Obama era, and I want to go back to this speech, it's the end of an era of an American internationalism. Donald Trump just declared it dead. Something that went back at least to World War II. You look at the other inaugural speech, right? Kennedy will go anywhere, bear any burden, pay any price to support and defend freedom. George W. Bush, it is the policy of the United States to defeat tyranny, to end tyranny. And what we're hearing from Donald Trump is no more of that. We're going to protect, he specifically said protectionism is a good thing, and we are going to defend ourselves, and enough of this nation building. And it is, frankly, the whole speech, a judgment on the failure of American policy for ordinary Americans. These two wars that have lasted 15 years have just soured millions of Americans on America's responsibility to defend freedom in the world.
David Muir, he's already got some of the policies on his website, even though we don't know what he's signing.
Yeah, the social transition has certainly begun on the White House website. Already several potential executive orders, perhaps a preview anyway, some of the highlights. And it echoes what we heard from Donald Trump on the campaign trail, his energy plan, eliminating harmful, unnecessary policies such as the Climate Action Plan, $50 trillion in untapped shale oil and natural gas reserves. He wants to open that up on federal lands, build a border wall and end sanctuary cities, renegotiate NAFTA, pull out of the TPP, among the things listed on the website already. You're seeing there President Clinton and Hillary Clinton. And, you know, there's a lot of talk on Twitter about the fact that she showed up and stood there as a former First Lady, but also as the opponent who lost to him after 65 million votes for her, 65 plus million, 66 perhaps. Obviously, he didn't mention her in the speech or talk about unity in any form. And there's been some interesting Twitter action from at least her supporters, many of whom plan to make their voices heard tomorrow, not only here in Washington, but at smaller gatherings around the country, George.
And our men and women in uniform, the military is not a thing. It's a group of committed.
And there it is, the first signature.
Willing to sacrifice everything on our behalf.
And as President Trump signs now his second order, we're going to close in on that.
The minor Michelle. Well, the same thing's true for our democracy. Democracy is not the buildings, not the monuments.
Flanked by his grandson there. And leaders in the House.
I assume he was approved today.
First bill he signed, a waiver for General Mattis' incoming head of the Pentagon, Martha Raddatz. He's, of course, served as a general. You have to wait, what, 7 years?
7 years, a civilian-controlled Defense Department. And with that waiver, Jim Mattis will be allowed to be Secretary of Defense.
Also signing the formal nominations of his other cabinet members. Proclaiming a National Day of Patriotism, that's something of a tradition as well. Other presidents have proclaimed national days of thanksgiving and remembrance. So far, mostly ceremonial, some housekeeping from the president. Only 2 cabinet members likely to be in place by the end of the day. Both generals, General Mattis, General Kelly for Homeland Security. Presidential privilege he's talking about right there. You get to give pens out after you sign orders or bills. He'll be doing that. Sometimes you even break the pen into pieces or sign one letter of your name at a time so you can have more pens. His son Barron there over his shoulder, right next to the House Speaker Paul Ryan. These are things, of course, the president can do on his own. The work of legislating begins next. Congress did have to approve that waiver for General Mattis, but that wasn't hard. He glided through, well respected by both Democrats and Republicans. In Cokie Robes, I'm struck by that scene we see right there, that mixture of leaders of Congress, his vice president, and his family. Boy, he likes to have his family very, very close by.
And these grandchildren are adorable. They're looking, closely, his son looking over his shoulder. This room he's in is called the president's room because the president would stay there. The old Congress adjourned on March 3rd, and the new president was inaugurated on March 4th for much of our history. And the old president would stay in that room and sign, or the new president, sign and sign and sign. I'm sorry, the old president, all night long before the new inauguration. And often doing things to upset somewhat the transition of power. So he coming into that room is part of a very long history of taking advantage of the nearness to it's right off the Senate chamber.
We just saw something there. We saw Nancy Pelosi give over a pen to the Republican leader of the Senate first, Mitch McConnell, then taking one of her own. She's actually taken off that pin she had on before that was symbolizing the protection of the Obamacare. He just a little praise there for his nominee for Secretary of Energy, Rick Perry. He's now signing all the nominations for all of his incoming cabinet secretary. As we said, David Muir, only 2 will be confirmed by the end of the day.
Yeah, and that's the big question, is how many will even have by the end of his first week next week. And you were saying earlier, George, that there's been a lot of debate over how much he would take as far as executive action or order right away, other than his nominees, or whether that we'll see more of that on Monday. But Kellyanne Conway has said in the last 24 hours that he plans to begin very quickly on, as you say, redefining Washington. And we're getting very little detail. I do see that on the website, as far as foreign policy is concerned, very similar language to what we saw during the campaign, saying peace through strength, rebuilding the military. But one thing that did stick out to us here is that there's a statement pledging to engage in cyber warfare against terrorist networks. Explicit language there involving cyber warfare that we haven't heard.
He said he's asking Terry Moran, with each passing president, the president takes on more responsibility, more power unto himself. We've seen the executive branch grow. Now that power being turned over from President Obama to President Trump.
And that concentration of power is what he explicitly said he wanted to reverse. But he is a guy who likes to take charge. So his personality, he's got an executive personality. There's no question about that. He wants to use it to transfer power back to the people, to disempower Washington. Ronald Reagan came to Washington saying the same thing. He did a good deal of that, and he wants very much to do the same.
America's so accustomed to seeing him at these tables signing on the television shows he's been a part of, The Apprentice, Celebrity Apprentice. And this is the brand new role for Donald Trump. He's sitting there as leader of the free world, now charting the course for this country almost immediately. And even just in our live coverage here moments ago, the outgoing President Obama speaking, and how quickly do we shift focus to the new president, number 45.
Great. I feel like I'm eavesdropping on a family dinner there. You're right, David. This looks like something he's used to. Yeah.
The television part of this, the imagery, he'll fall right into very easily, I would gather, with the same skill set. I see Jared Kushner back to the left there. And one thing I did notice on the steps of the Capitol, standing behind his father-in-law, and this was before he took the oath, but Jared Kushner had a smile on his face, and so rarely do you see any emotion in his face. But he's going to play, obviously, a very key role inside that White House.
And for the African American community in particular, he now holds a special place in the homes of many Americans. A home that was once felt only by Martin Luther King Jr., Malcolm X. Now Obama is in that pantheon.
And with that final wave, he enters the plane, Special Air Mission 28,000, United States of America.
How many hours to Palm Springs? I mean, can you imagine? How soon will he be golfing? He said he wants to catch up on sleep, right?
It's about 6 hours, I think, 5.5 hours.
They might be able to go a little faster in that. The first time, he's going to be thinking, how does this stack up to what I already have?
Absolutely. The White House is smaller than his penthouse at Trump Tower. And having flown back on Trump Force One, or Trump's plane, during the campaign, he gave me the tour. And, you know, he relishes those moments. And he has been asked before, though, what's it going to be like to downsize, to move into the White House? And he said, look, it's the White House. So he does recognize certainly what he's accomplished, the biggest triumph of his life so far. And when he sleeps there for the first time tonight, there had been questions obviously early on whether he would do that. The whole family will be there tonight. And he says he wants to sleep in the Lincoln bedroom, the bed that's 8 feet long. I don't think even Donald Trump can predict what it's going to feel like to be in there tonight. His sons told us they've never even been to the White House.
Never been to the White House. As we look at the scene there in Washington, D.C., I want to bring in Alex Castellanos as well, close student supporter of Donald Trump, broadcasting tonight from Lafayette Square, right across from the White House.
Right across from the White House, and they've asked me to join the reviewing stand, so I'll let you know the view from there. But the license plate you were just getting ready to talk about, right? There are a lot of people upset that these license plates, Donald Trump didn't ask for a license plate special for him.
Yeah, they got a special inaugural license plate, number 1. What that does not include are the normal Washington, D.C. tags that say no taxation without representation, or taxation without representation, which of course is part of the D.C. statehood protest. The president, not a supporter of D.C. statehood. But now, Washington, D.C., the White House, his home, and you're going to have a special edition of World News Tonight from Lafayette.
We'll see you later. Fascinating day so far.
It certainly is.